Now let's see the properties of the repository service here. First one, the naming convention. Once you give the name, you cannot change it. And this is very important because this name, the name of the repository, is embedded into multiple metadata tables. It is one of the core or the key attribute on which many of the fetchers work behind the screens using the model-driven metadata approach of Informatica. So that name is also important, and it should be the same once you create the metadata content. You can always change the primary node. You can select a grid which has multiple nodes under it, and that is there always. Okay, that's the general properties. Repository properties, we just spoke about this, except security audit trail. Security audit trail is for you to know which user from which machine has logged in and done what. Did he insert something, update something, delete something? Did he change something and did not save it? All those things will be inserted into your repository tables, and once those are inserted into the repository tables, if you have the repository content access, you can always run a query to get the data out on who has done what. Database properties. This is your repository database properties. You can see the usage of the database type, the code page which we are using, connection string, username, password, and these are all again default. So database connection timeout is 180 seconds. If it is not able to connect, if the repository service is not able to connect to the repository database within 180 seconds of the service has been triggered, then it will fail. Okay. Array operation size. This is to improve the way it will fetch the data. So if you look at this here, number of rows to fetch each time on array database operation is issued, which means this is basically like an indexing option which will fetch the records faster whenever you do a restart of the Power Center repository service. At any given point of time, how many number of connections would this accept? It is 500 by default. This usually will not suffice in a real-time setup. You have to keep on increasing it based on the usage of the application or the tool by the number of people. And how would you know that? Let's say you made it to 5,000. Okay, how would you know if you need to increase it? Whenever somebody is trying to access, then you would get a message saying maximum number of connections already reached. Please contact your administrator. Whenever you get a notification or complaint from somebody that this is there, then you can come back here, reset it to any higher number so that you won't get it. In some of the project, they are more proactive enough to write some scripts, Unix scripts, outside of the Informatica environment, which will keep on checking the number of connections and which will give a report or insert some table so that there will be a trend analysis done to see what is the time in the whole day when there are maximum connections happening to the database, right? Okay. Table owner name, if there is any table owner name, we'll give it. As we are talking all this administration on a Windows server, but how different is it done in Unix server where GUI is not a choice? In the repository properties, all of this, okay, first of all, even if your installation is done on Unix, you still have your GUI. You can connect to this link using the web browser. All the web browser needs is a Tomcat service and a server behind the screen to run it. Okay, so whatever we are looking at and learning things, it is still available even if it's a Windows environment or a Unix environment. Now, if let's say there are projects where the admin console is not really an option, well, it is by default available, but if for some reason they say it's a Unix environment and you should use only Unix to do it, then you have to follow the pmcmd commands, pmrep commands, which are available, which we will discuss later. And all of these properties, whichever you see, are part of those command lines. You have to use the commands every time to connect to the repository, get the default value, even for you to see what the value is, and if you have to update it, you have to use some other kind of pmcmd command or pmrep command to upgrade that.
So Sid, on the back end, this application is creating commands. So let's say you change this database pool, that it will run a pmref command on behind the scenes.
Yes, but we cannot see that command. It is all integrated within the Tomcat and the server. Okay, advanced properties, trusted connection. If you click on trusted connection, it will create another certificate kind of implementation which is done additionally to whatever Informatica gives for the connection name password. That is usually a check done for the overall application rather than only the repository database. Okay, when I say overall application, that trusted connection check will be there for the whole of Oracle itself or for your database itself rather than only this connection. Comments required for check-in. This goes back to the properties which you gave in the exclusive mode versioning. For versioning, do you need comments? Obviously, I'm enabling versioning to know what is the change which is being done. But if I don't need the comments, it doesn't make sense, right? So this is by default enabled whenever the versioning is checked. There is a small issue there though. Let's say there is an object here. Now see the click marks, the green color tick marks on these, which means that the object is ready to be checked in. I click on check in and I can type anything or just put a dot. It is considered that as a comment. Okay. If you uncheck that option there, if you uncheck this option there, you don't have to give the comment. Even if you click on cancel or OK, it will consider that and take it as a version. Four reps for 4 environment. Yes. Again, we're not talking about any of the standards or the best practices here. We are talking about the practical implementations. That is how it is being done. They know there are problems, but they see the advantage of gaining the efforts or spending the number of man hours working on a particular aspect by putting all of them together. They know if they put everything together, there will be downtime issues, there will be performance issues during processing, but they are okay with that because they have rest of the other benefits. Okay, log level. This is similar to what we have discussed yesterday. Now again, the system, we don't have anything which is specifically said that I want this log level to be error or fatal. Whichever the system provides us as fatal and error are good enough for us to know that the system something is wrong with the system. Wherever there is a warning, info, trace or debug, those are good to have. I mean, those are issues, but system can be enabled and it is up and running. Now we can look for these options, warning, info, trace and debug, whenever you get information from the developer team that I enabled something, it is failing, but I'm not getting any error. For example, let's take the tracing level. Tracing level at the session level is enabled to verbose. Okay, though he has enabled that to verbose, it is still giving the normal method of tracing level. In that kind of scenarios, you can come to the logs and verify why it is not happening. Okay, I mean, it's not easy because in the log files you'll have numerous lines for these four: warnings, info, trace and debug. And in the logs tab, as we have seen yesterday, you have a filter option. Select what you want to look at, you can filter it and figure it out. Resilience timeout, same thing as we have discussed yesterday, just like the domain properties. But this resilience timeout is specifically between your repository service and the repository database. If you're maintaining the repository database and the domain content, domain metadata together on the same database with the same username password, then it will be the same. Okay. Enable rep agent caching. What is rep agent caching? In the repository service, you have sorry, in the client tools, I'll take a simple example. We have something called as, we have a property called as this one. I'm not sure if you're able to look at it. Recovery strategy, and then you have an option of resume testing from the last checkpoint. Let me open something which has where you can see it. I think all my mappings are screwed up in this. Yeah, this is good. Recovery strategy. If you select resume from last checkpoint, that means the repository service has to maintain the last checkpoint for this particular job when it got failed. What is last checkpoint here? Let's say there are 100 records, 50 records got processed, 51st record failed. Now the last checkpoint here is the 50th record, which is the good one and which got processed. Okay, so like this, if you have 1,000 workflows, it has to maintain for all 1,000 of that. And this is just an example. It has multiple other options of holding that information at the repository level, metadata level, and it will provide you that based on the options which you select at the design level. And that's the cache capacity. That's the number of objects which we can maintain at a given point of time. That's not in MBs or KBs. Now this is the PM ping, which is the heartbeat interval, which means to check at every 60 seconds if the service is up and running and if there is any issue. If the SMTP is enabled, through the SMTP service, it will send a notification to the group whichever we have set saying the heartbeat interval have not recognized the server being up and running. Okay, based on that you can come back here. Usually whenever you have set that notification and you notice that notification and come back to this, it will be up and running. I mean, it's not a standard. It depends completely on the way infrastructure setup is done and the server's performance. So whenever you come back into the logs of repository service and see, it will be loaded as a info because we have given this particular property as info. If this is frequently happening, then you can give this as an error. Whenever you set that as an error, it will fail the complete service. Okay. Maximum connections at any given point of time, 200 connections can be used, and anything more, just like the previous example, you have to enable this and you'll get a message that maximum connections have exceeded. Maximum object logs. What are object logs? Let's say I have opened this workflow here. Okay, the same workflow one of you have opened, as you are my counterpart in the on-site, you have opened it at your end. Okay, now you left for the day while making some changes. Now as I'm in the offshore time zone, I need to make some changes. So I'll send a mail to the administrator saying this object is locked, can you unlock it? Okay, like that. This is one object. Like that, I can have at the max of 50,000 locks at any given point of time. Okay, I think I have increased that number in my previous sessions to show them that you can do it manually. Let's see what's the default. Yeah, no, it's the same thing. Default is 50,000. Okay. Database pool expiration threshold. This is the database connection again. The minimum number of ideal database connections is only 5. So if you have connected to this and if you're idle, then at any given point of time, only 5 connections will be disabled or can be idle at any point of time. So it follows the latest method of, let's say 5 guys are already connected and I got connected to it again as a 6th member. If the first one who got connected is ideal for a certain period of time, his connection will be disconnected and it will be 5 ideal cases at any given point of time. That is, it does not really matter anyway in any possible scenario. The timeout feature is there for all the client tools as well. If we leave it as it is now for about 5 to 10 minutes, it will just get disconnected. Preserve MX data. What is MX data? MX is metadata, information data for the old versions of the mapping. What does this mean? This means that if I go to versioning and click on view history, whatever is my previous list of comments whichever I have made for that particular object, I want all of that to be saved at the depository level. Okay, now by default all of that are saved, but what does this do? This option will also save the versioning comments of the objects which are deleted, and those can be seen only by the administrators. Okay, that's one. The other option is, if you're using Metadata Manager MDM by MDM tool along with Power Center in combination, this also comes in handy. Not in the case of versioning comments, but in the case of object names. Okay, that's about the advanced properties of this. This is again Metadata Manager service. If you have any Metadata Manager service enabled, you have to set that here. Right now there is none. I had one earlier which I've created for the Metadata Manager service, but it didn't happen because of the licensing, so I've deleted that. So we can custom properties, same explanation like I've done for domain. If you're connecting Power Center with any other tools, there will be a predefined step to enable the custom properties for the repository service or the domain, and based on that you have to enable that here. Okay, you have processes. This will show you what are the processes which are running under this or this particular repository service is using. Connections and logs. Now the 50,000 number which we said will come here. It will show you what is the connection ID, what is the username with which you've logged on, what is the tool, login time, and the last activity. Click on logs here. It will show you the list of logs which are available if there is any. So the first thing, if somebody complains saying I have a log on a particular object, you have to come to this, log into the admin page, come to this connections and logs, see if that particular object log is available. Let's assume this is the one. Okay, then I would just click on the recycle button here. It'll prompt me, are you sure you want to do it? If you still want to do it, give me your user ID password, so that this entry that this username administrator is used to kill something is noted in the repository metadata tables. Click OK. That is gone. See this? This connection in the repository agent DWH dev has been terminated. Okay, that's a notification which both of them will get. Now, as you're the on-site guy, you will get it, but you have already left for the day, so obviously it doesn't make sense. Now, as I requested it, I would get it. All I have to do is disconnect, connect it back, and then open the object. Then it will be open for me to write. Read, I can still do it even if there is a lock, but I can write on it. I can write the changes. Okay, that's the connections and locks. This will be a usual case. If you have a ticketing system, on a monthly basis, you'll have about 10 tickets about releasing the locks. Okay. What are the additional plugins which are available for this repository? Now, if you remember, I made a statement that if you go to Informatica support about your multilingual or multi-language, sorry for using multilingual every time, it's multi-language, multi-language data processing, if they are able to help you with any out-of-the-box solution of their scripting technologies, that will be part of this here. Okay. What users, what groups have permissions to this repository service? You can look at it now, and this will directly take you to the log files and show you the content. Now, okay, let's come back here. Let's see the properties from the actions point of view. Recycle service is disabling and enabling it together. Okay, whenever you want to just restart it on a weekly basis for just performance issues, click on recycle. If you just want to disable it so that you have to do some other action and you want to make sure that nothing is impacted at the repository service level, you click on disable service. Repository content. Now, if you see here, you don't have create option and you don't have copy, delete. The only option you have here is backup. You can have the backup of your repository content, which is nothing but your database content, as a .rep extension in any of your Windows location, if you are using it, or any of your Unix locations as well. Administrator. Okay, what is the file name you want to give? REP BKP 2014-03-23. Okay, if there is a name with this already, do you want to replace it? And do you want to skip all of this? Usually, if it is a dev environment or a QA environment or a UAT environment, we don't need this, right? You can just simply skip it. This is unnecessary space consumption. If it is production, you should be aware of how many days of workflows or session logs should be available. Now, as you can notice, there is no date specific check which you have to do it. If you have to have, you would have to uncheck this. If you should not have it, if you think you should not have it, you can simply skip it. Okay, where will all this backup go and stay? Remember, we spoke about this yesterday. All of this backup will go and sit in the backup directory. Where did we define the backup directory? On the node properties, right? What is a node? Node is a physical machine here, right? So we are saving the backup on the same directory of the server on which the service is running. Let me click on OK here. It will take some time. Okay, that is done. Now I'll go to the node here. See this backup directory? I copied it. Okay, this is the one which we just created. Okay, now backup is a little wider concept than what we've just seen. Based on the environment you are there, the backups should be maintained for at least 7 days. Okay, if you think it is more crucial, you should maintain it for 15 days on a daily basis. When I say 15 days, not once in 15 days, 15 times for the last 15 days, right? You can do it manually, or you can automate it using any of the commands existing, either from the batch script or the shell script, to take the backups, which are also called as snapshots, and keep it aside. That's one way of doing it. The second way is to request your database backup. What is that backup file which we just took? It is nothing but the content of this files, content of this data metadata tables. Instead of doing that in the file server or the file system, you would do it at the database level. All you have to do in this case is to raise a request to the DBAs to set an automatic process to have the snapshots created for the last 7 days. For example, if there is somebody in your development team and he has deleted something for some reason, by some mistake, you would have a backup. You can ask that backup to be restored on some test machine or any of your repository content, pull that object, delete it back. Okay, there are multiple ways of doing it, but backup should be there, and it is always better to automate the system of backing up your repositories on a daily basis, either at the database level or at your file service level. Okay. Okay, that's backup files. And if you want to look at the backup files, it will directly connect to your backup folder which we just saw, and this file server system, and these are all the file connections which I have. Okay. Now see this. What are the other options? If you create a repository service and said no content exists, then you can create it from, it will by default start creating it. Okay, or you can create it here. When will this be enabled? Now Rakesh has sent me a mail yesterday saying he's on a version 9.1 and he wants to move to 9.5. Okay, the first thing which he has to do is take a backup file. Then when he installs 9.5 and comes to this particular admin console of 9.5, this will be disabled, and there will be a statement here right below this line saying this repository content is not the latest. You have to go here, click on upgrade, and it will be upgraded. Okay, we'll come to the restoration in a while. The reason I am postponing that is we have a separate hour session for that. We'll talk about it. I'll show it to you how you take a backup, restore it, and delete content in that session. Okay. So that's the repository content. Repository domain. These are all your domain registries. What does that mean? Under the domain with my PC name here, I have all of these services registered. Okay. If you want the connection between the domain and the repository service to be removed, you can select the option of unregister or register. If you're getting a new connection and if you want to register that with this domain, you have to give the username, password, and the domain specific details, and it will be linked together. Okay, that's your domain properties. And notify users. Now let's say for some reason usually you are a planned guy and you send notification one day before to all the team saying from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. tomorrow you will not have your system up and running. But for some reason you could not anticipate that issue is coming up and you realize you need to do it now. Okay, then this is a message. Then you can use this option to notify all the users from the admin that the service will not be available for the next 10 minutes. Okay, click OK, and whichever users are part of this repository service, groups and users, will get a notification saying received a message the moment you click on it, and you get a message like this. How many ever tools you have opened, you'll get the message in all of that. Okay, so that's a quick option of notifying everybody that there is a service disruption. All right, that's the notify users. Last activity log. What was happened to the repository metadata in the last session, which is a couple of minutes back or 10 minutes back. We have done the backup. See the table name, these are all the tables which have been backed up onto that backup table. Okay, so that's the message which you can see to find out who has done what in the last thing.